research for our Deep Space Nine documentary, What We Left Behind. Thank you. And so we've met several times with Terry and the rest of the cast, and we've been doing a lot of research on this show. There's over 175 or 6 episodes. 176, and 6 seasons of Terry. And we've been doing all kinds of interviews, and a lot of, there's the whole Deep Space Nine Companion, which has got a plethora of information about Deep Space. So there's a couple of topics that I want to hit while we're here, some of the hot topics involving Jadzia. But before we get to that, I thought we might begin at the beginning, which is your upbringing in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And then leaving home early to get to New York and become a top model, and then you made your way to Hollywood. Can you talk a little bit about that whole experience?
Wow, that was good timing, don't you think? Actually, I didn't sell vacuums, but I did every job I could do. I started working when I was about 9 years old for my mom at her hair salon. And then I did any kind of odd job I could. I saved my money to leave home, not knowing that it was going to be about modeling or acting, but just I wanted to see the world. I already knew when I was young that I felt that way. And like your dad, I took a train from Cedar Rapids, Iowa to New York City. I had my grandmother's old suitcase that I had taped shut because it wouldn't stay shut without tape, and a little box with some pots and pans in it, and that was the beginning of my career in New York.
How old were you?
17.
Wow.
Yeah.
That takes guts. I mean, I think Leonard was 18 when he took a 3-day train ride from Boston to LA. So you guys are on the same track, basically, going opposite directions. But the need to get out of where you were.
Yeah.
Then what happened in New York, briefly?
Briefly, the first day I was there, I met an editor from Mademoiselle magazine, and she said, I want you to come to Condé Nast on Monday because I have a job for you. And so I got my first job the first day I was there. And the day before I was going to do the photo shoot, I was standing in a street corner right outside of Elite Model Management's building, and I got punched in the face by a bike messenger. And I was more upset that I thought I was going to lose my job because I had a big fat lip. Blood was everywhere. And John Casablancas, it was really, I go all the way up, I don't know, there must have been on like the 20th floor. He comes back down as if he's going to find the bike messenger to stick up for me. And I thought that I was going to lose my job. Well, they changed the shoot. Instead of being about makeup, they made it about soaps and shampoo. So they put a baby pool in the middle of the studio, and they had me sit in it, and I had a bathing suit on, but it was really all beauty pictures of me with soap everywhere. And they used a shower in front of my face so that you couldn't see that I had a fat lip. So, it's weird. I was a late bloomer and everything, so I didn't really get that they wanted me really bad to make sure that happened. I thought it was just because, well, I'm really nice, And then I had my first cover after 6 weeks, and then I was the fastest model to go from New Faces to Elite. So I was a top model in 6 months and had many covers.
And then the transition to, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, let's give it up for Terry for all those covers. So she had quite a career going before the call to Hollywood.
Birthday, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. And before your transition to acting and your move to Hollywood, how did that all happen?
I had an agent that was affiliated an agency called J. Michael Bloom that no longer exists, but they handled commercials for all the models. And the woman who ran it, Davian Littlefield, who became a very famous manager, now handles Broadway stars. But she said, what do you think about acting? And I said, I don't know, what do you think about acting? She said, I think you should go to a class. I said, okay, where do I go? And so I went to acting class, and I got a modeling job for ANS, they used to do these commercials just to get you in SAG. They used actual pictures of you, but it was on a commercial. So it was a way for you to get your SAG card. And then basically you got paid enough money by doing that commercial. And then after that I got a commercial for Expert Eyes for Maybelline. And I started doing other commercials. And then I read for a TV movie called Paper Dolls, which Alexandra Paul and Daryl Hannah starred in. And then a year later, ABC actually held me on kind of a contract, and they asked me to go to voice lessons because my voice was really high and stay with my acting classes. And a year later, I read for the TV series. I don't know how I got myself so nervous, but I was the only person testing for my part. And shockingly, I got it. And that's what took me to LA.
And you did a number of roles before you got to Jadzia, the auditions for Jadzia. I mean, there's some of the classics like Back to School, which is arguably a classic, am I right? Back to School. You Rodney Dangerfield fans out there, including myself.
Thank you.
And Hellraiser.
Hellraiser, oh my God. Yeah, it was much easier working with Rodney. Much.
But tell us,
much better trailers.
And you finally made it to, and you had the audition with Junie Lowry, brought you in, the casting director, whom I've worked with many times.
Yes.
Brought you in to read for Jadzia, and tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, wow. At the beginning of the summer, I wasn't quite ready. Junie didn't think I was right for it to begin with. When they were first casting for Deep Space Nine, which actually was fine because I ended up getting Red Dwarf, and I did the part of the cat, and that didn't really work out because honestly it really wasn't funny. Red Dwarf, the American version, was terrible, and but that freed me up to audition for other things. And so I kept saying, what's going on with that Star Trek thing? And finally I think they'd pretty much seen everyone. And so they brought me in and gave me a shot at it, and I read for it, and I got down to the wire, and I read with 5 other girls, and there was one actress that didn't show up, and they were going to do another reading. Now in SAG, in an audition situation, once you're under that kind of pressure and you read at the final reading for something, you don't have to read again. It's like, it's too much pressure for them to put you under again. It's an illegal thing, but it's a legal thing, I mean. But I was afraid because they didn't put us on tape that I would lose the part if I didn't show up, because I knew who the actress was. And I wasn't gonna let her win it. So I went back, and my agent was like, Terry, you really don't have to. And I'm like, well, if I can't do it twice, then I can't do the part. So I have no business wanting the job if I can't audition for this twice. So I auditioned for it again, and then I was gonna meet Marina and Marina Sirtis, Michael Dorn, and Jonathan Frakes after my audition on Planet Hell, where they do all their, well, you guys know what Planet Hell is. So I went down there to say hi to them, and then I got a call right before they were coming out to say hi to me that Rick Berman needed me back in the office, and that's when Rick and Junie and Michael Piller told me that I got the part, and I burst into tears because I was so excited I got to play Spock's part on Deep Space Nine. So, but I did, I cried.
Let's jump ahead, yes. Let's jump ahead a little bit to the pilot. I remember, I was fortunate enough to have directed a couple of episodes, my debut episodes on TNG, and one of my mentors was David Carson, who directed the pilot of Deep Space Nine. And I remember coming on the set and seeing you from afar and being overwhelmed by her beauty, and as Jadzia and as herself. And but there was issues on the set about some of the Technobabble.
Thank you, first of all. That was very kind of you.
You're welcome.
I'm glad I didn't see him because I would have totally been crushing on him then.
Anytime, by the way. But what was that like? I mean, this whole thing, Junie Lowry, again, the casting director, was talking about that a lot of the auditions had to do with whether or not people could deliver this technobabble, we called it back then. What was that like for you?
It was really hard. and it was scary because by the time I was in there, they'd already shot everybody else's stuff. They'd shot, I mean, maybe they had to pull back and do a master shot. But beyond the master shot, everything was my close-ups and maybe a few two-shots. So ops was like being on stage. And I'd never done anything in theater or, I mean, other than high school musicals, things like that. Definitely not the same kind of pressure. And everybody else had already bonded and everything. So I was really nervous. It really felt the pressure. So if anything, you know, when it didn't go right, it really was all on my shoulders. And it was just really hard. It was really stressful. I was super thin at the time because I could hardly keep anything down or sleep enough. And I don't even know how I got through it, honestly. It was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean by when I say Technobabble, and Dad had a big issue with this as well. This is stuff that has to do with the technical part of running the ship or running the space station. As a science officer, you have to know all this stuff, and it has to just kind of roll off the tip of your tongue with ease because you've been studying it at the Starfleet Academy, you know, half of your life. But it doesn't mean anything. There's no emotion behind it, so it's really hard to remember exactly what, and they want it word for word as well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely word for word. Which actually ended up helping me with Becker, because I thought, oh yay, half-hour show, not so much. That too, comedy, you have to get it word for word. You cannot mess up. So Star Trek was like the best training ever. It was like being in college for acting.
Let's talk a little bit about the beginning of, again, a lot of this is from the research I've been doing. You just find out the most amazing things about the characters on the show. It was an incredible ensemble cast, Deep Space Nine that you had to work with. You were challenged in the fact that many of the cast members had already been cast and had been shooting before you even came on board because you had so much trouble casting the part of Jadzia. And you talked a little bit in one of the early interviews about the fact that there was so much issue as to what your character, how to play your character. At one point, Rick Berman, the executive producer, was talking about he wanted a Grace Kelly look. They wanted a beautiful woman as a part of the crew. And then another meeting with him, he was talking about they wanted somebody who had, because Jadzia was a symbiont, had a symbiont in her, was a trill, that she had had lived 7 lives before she got to Jadzia, before the symbiont got to Jadzia, and therefore you have this wisdom of Yoda. So how do you, is that not correct?
That's absolutely, yeah. Actually, that was all in the same meeting. Besides that and my, all their fittings and craziness. But yeah, and honestly, I think I started to feel like I was painted in a corner of, there were just too much direction coming at me, and too many, don't do this, don't do that. So then you start to feel paralyzed to make any kind of decisions because everything feels like it's going to be a wrong decision.
But how did you prepare? What were the kind of the things that you were looking for to glom onto for your character?
Actually, a friend of mine, Judith Ridnicki, helped me with the perspective of looking at my life as if each section was a lifetime. So my childhood was a lifetime. My teenage years, me fighting to get to New York, me being a supermodel, me being a struggling actress, so these were all different lifetimes. They were all different parts of me. The athletic person of me is a different person, which is also a part of Dax, the kickboxing side of me, the tomboy that wanted to be close to my dad, learn how to fix cars and all kinds of other really masculine things. Thank you, Dad. But I think what really helped was because they started to get so concerned about me, even though it was really super embarrassing for me at the time, they hired an acting coach, Ivana Chubbuck, to work with me, and she's a really, really good acting coach. And so I went to meet with her, and lucky me, Paramount paid for it. And she told me, you know what, Terry, after we worked together for about an hour, she said, you don't have any problems with your acting. What you have problems with is this dialogue. So what you really need is a dialect coach, or a dialogue coach, somebody to be on set with you, to run lines with you. And It is kind of amazing, all the money we spend on Star Trek, and there wasn't somebody there just to run lines. Not the script supervisor, they're busy doing other things, but just someone with that being their job. No, never happened. So she hired somebody else because they were paying her to run lines with me. And then she and I worked together on stuff and made it more fun. So she helped teach me her method. And I learned from Stella Adler mostly method acting, which was not serving me well on a television series. Yeah. It
can be very confusing, actually, for an actor.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact that things started to change, the evolution of Jadzia, because once Ira Stephen Bear, who became on as the executive producer of the show, was talking a lot about the fact that they were, there's this whole thing about the old man, the wise old man, who was the mentor of Commander at that point, then Captain Sisko. And then they decided to kind of change things up and make Jadzia more like Curzon Dax. This is a guy who liked to cut loose and gamble and swear and drink, and LeVar Burton has coined the phrase "Action Barbie." They turned Jadzia Dax into Action Barbie.
Yeah.
And then came the bathlith and the interest in Klingon culture. What was that like?
Well, first show when he said when it was in TV Guide that LeVar said Terry Farrell's Action Barbie, and I was like, fuck yeah, man, that was really freaking cool. Right? LeVar Burton called me Action Barbie, and that was totally a compliment. I loved working with him. He was a fun director to work for, and he always smelled like lavender, which was like so amazing. So you just get close to him and you'd be like, oh, hi LeVar.
I'll be sure to get some.
Yeah, I think you're all good on your own there, hon. So anyway, we're talking about... yeah, a different kind of hot flash, that's for sure. What did you ask me?
The whole transition.
Oh, transition.
Cutting loose and
Speaking
playing
of
at
hot flashes.
the Dabo and Pongo tables. And
Yeah, it was way more fun. It was more fun when Ira, well, I think also Ira had said to me, I was taking kickboxing classes to get in shape, and then it coincided with me. He said he wanted me to be more roguish, but he saw that he really started to write towards what he was saying about me, Terry, that I was so much more physical person than they had me written as Dax to begin with. I am a super high energy person, I'm athletic, I have a really hard time calming down. So he started to write towards that, and even just doing the stunts and stuff, it was so much fun for me. It was just, it's a dance that you're doing, and the collaboration is so much fun, and because it's physical, it's a whole nother, really super satisfying way to act, is to move your body and tell a story like that instead of with words. And there's so much exposition in the show. I think it was just a nice release to be able to just hang and have it be something instead of say something.
Yeah, I mean, powerful women figures are so important to Star Trek, and the previous panel kind of talked about that as role models. And I really think one of my favorite episodes is Blood Oath, because Jadzia stands up with, you're there with all those guys from the original series, Bill Campbell and John Colicos and Michael and Sarah, and I really felt like you held your own and really kicked some ass and really proved yourself in that episode.
Thank
All right?
you, Adam.
I mean, we watched it together, I had to binge watch, trying to catch up on the show, and we decided to look at some of the Jadzia episodes, and I just loved what you did in that show.
You made me watch that again. And I was really hard on myself when the show first came out. It was nice to see it 20 plus years later and be like, wow, I was pretty good. Yeah, those were fun scenes, and those guys were powerhouses in their own right. It was very exciting to watch back. I didn't realize how much work was in that episode until we saw it back. It's funny when you're in the middle of the job, you're just in constant momentum, and sometimes you lose perspective on how much you're actually doing. It was an awesome episode. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the loves of Jadzia.
All right.
of which there were many.
Be careful.
Walked gingerly here, tread lightly. Well, in the pilot, obviously an emissary, Bashir expressed his feelings for you, or at least hit on you. Jet Z, I should say. There were a number of romantic interludes. There was Doral from this Meridian planet that appeared periodically. There was
Big blonde guy?
Yeah, one of those. I don't remember. There was. I'm trying to forget them all, actually. There was Rejoined, where you had a lesbian kiss with a past love.
Anna Thompson.
Right, which is forbidden in the Trill culture.
Not because we were both women, but because we were in a relationship in a previous life. That's what was forbidden.
Right. Okay. And then there was then Worf appeared.
Yeah.
And what was that like? You knew Michael Dorn beforehand, and you talked a little bit in some of the interviews about kind of playing out your scenes together and maybe intimating something. And Ira always talked about writing to what the actors were playing. Was that kind of a part of the plan? How did that all come about?
Because Michael and I were friends, and neither one of us really had a storyline yet, and we had this scene to play. Hey, let's flirt with each other, and then they'll write more stuff for us to do together, because we're friends. Okay. Of course, I didn't know at the time what a pain in the ass he would be to work with. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway. Yeah, so they started to write for us, and it was fun, actually. Actually, even in our struggle, when we did have times that were a struggle as friends, working together, what was really great was we would always talk something through or sit through whatever felt uncomfortable and talk about it. So our friendship ended up being really good friends because of that. You know, there was nothing under the rug. We didn't pretend everything was okay if it wasn't. So I think that gave us a level of trust with each other that I think really, you could definitely see that on screen, that we trusted each other, we felt safe with each other wherever the scenes were going. When you feel safe with another actor, almost anything's possible, and that's not a given. I mean, you can act like you're attracted to somebody, but when you know someone and you trust someone, and you can see in our show, all of our scenes with each other, the more we all know each other, the further on down through the series you get, our bond is really tight, and I think that's what we have as people, because we survived all of that together, being super tired, not always being our most graceful with each other. And for me, that's one of the reasons I love everybody I worked with on Deep Space Nine, because we all went through the trenches together. And, you know, we came out the other side with a great show.
Fire, obviously. I mean, it's really difficult making these shows. I mean, a lot of people don't really appreciate the incredible amount of work and the hours and the makeup. I mean, you had talked to me about being on the road at 4 a.m. to get into makeup, and then you might be shooting until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, Dad used to talk about this all the time. I would ask him about any particular episode, he'd say, "Don't ask me, it's just a blur. It's a 3-year blur, because you're just going from one into another." So it's very difficult work. I love the relationship between Sia and Worf. I mean, I think you guys sold it, frankly. I mean, that's just my opinion. We're going to be talking in the film, in our documentary, a lot about the loves on DS9. There's so many love triangles and relationships and who loves whom, and depending on what season you're in, it's tough to keep up, but I thought you guys did a great job. But let's talk about, yeah, I mean, I really think you guys sold it, and I think it's because there was that mutual respect and you trusted each other, and you know, the fans go either way. You know, when we interview fans about how they felt about you guys, your relationship, or about Kira and Odo, and Cassidy and Cisco. I mean, everybody likes to weigh in on these things, so I think it's going to be a big part of our documentary. I want to talk a little bit about leaving the show here, because we have just a few minutes left, and we want to get to questions that you guys might have. But, you know, I just want to say very briefly that my father in 1975 wrote a book entitled I Am Not Spock. And he spent the last 40 years explaining what he meant by that title. Because the fans were not happy with that book, or at least the title of the book, which I think was misunderstood. He was saying literally people confuse him with a character that he played, not that he was distancing himself or dissing Spock or he didn't want to do Star Trek anymore. And by the same token, people are always asking, I know, coming up to you and talking about or wondering about what happened that seventh season and why you weren't there. And I wonder if you could just, you know, briefly address that a little bit.
Sure. At the end of our 5th season, we knew our contracts were up at the end of the 6th season. So when you sign on for the pilot, you sign a contract that says you are theirs for 6 years, for 6 seasons. And when that's over, you have no obligation to stay. At the end of the 5th season, they were negotiating for the 7th season. With an 8th season, they knew would never happen. So, you know, in the 8th season, all your dreams came true in that contract because it wasn't going to happen. Yeah, the Learjet, the movies. No, I'm just kidding. But you understand what I'm saying. So basically, the summer before the 6th season started, I knew what the offer was. And I was told, this is the offer, and if you're not okay with it, then you can say no, and that's it. So I spent the majority of that summer up in Lake Tahoe with my mom and dad, and just wrote so many journals. I just journaled like all day long between, you know, my mom and dad would be at work, and it's sort of like I was their house girl. I cleaned the house, I made them dinner, and in between all of that, I was writing in my journal about how I felt, how did I feel about that, how do I feel as a person being given an ultimatum. I wanted to have a conversation. I felt like after 6 years of being on the show, and I thought that I'd become a better actress, I'd given everything I had. We didn't have a rate. I mean, we had a inflation bump every year, which is, you know, just to meet with what's going on in the world. But nothing that was a raise. And
Becca was not a part of this process at all.
No, Becker was not a part of this process at all. And so when I started the 6th season, everybody had signed but me. And I said, but I really think this should be a negotiable thing, not, you know, an all or nothing kind of. Nope, it's all or nothing. It's either you're coming to stay, you're signing, or it's over. Like that cold. So I'm sorry, but I cannot. That didn't seem fair to me. And there were a whole bunch of other things involved. Cullum, and this is nothing against Cullum, but Cullum would be able to leave and do films, do other projects. Avery left and did different projects. He did Paul Robeson, for example. And the show worked around it. I got a phone call because I was on the cover of, this was in the 5th season, I was on the cover of TV Guide with Jerry, and Jerry, Ryan, and I, and we looked freaking amazing. And thank you, but we did. It's one of my favorite pictures ever, and adore her, she's so much fun. At any rate, Seinfeld called and wanted me to come in. Now I had to get an okay from, Seinfeld was a half-hour show. That's 5 days of work. Our show is shot in 10 days. I don't know, I'm sure you've seen a lot of episodes of Deep Space Nine. There are plenty where I'm hardly in them, right? Thank you. So I wanted to know, could I get out for those 5 days? You need to have that permission first before you go on the audition. No, you're not allowed to go. So this informed me too about how I felt about being given an ultimatum. So I'm getting nothing. I can't leave for, I mean, God, Jerry's Girls, you know, what? Who wouldn't want to be one of Jerry's girls? I was perfect.
I wanted to be one of Jerry's girls.
You see? Thank you. At any rate, so I went and had a meeting with the executive producer, and I said, I know this, you're saying no to any money. How about what if I'm reoccurring? What if I do half the amount of episodes? Just, you know, what if it looks like that? No, it's take it or leave it. So I left it. And while we were still filming in the 6th season in January, which is called pilot season, I started reading for pilots. And I started testing. I started getting really close to getting a few different shows. And then I didn't get them, which was fine. But Rick Berman knew this. I'm sorry, the executive knew this. And then I read for this show, this half-hour show that was being shot on the Paramount lot, called Becker.
All right, so now the chronology is straight. I mean, just to clarify, because there was a lot of misconception stuff of interviews we had read and some of the interviews with the fans that they thought that you wanted to spread your wings and do bigger things, and Becker came along and you just jumped at the chance, which was not really quite accurate. But let's before we go to questions, and we're going to have the last 5 minutes for you guys. If you have any questions, please come up to the mic. But let's just wrap up on a positive note about the legacy. I mean, our documentary is entitled "What We Left Behind," what you left behind. It was one of the episodes, and what is it about the legacy, the character, the transformative part of your life, the fan base? What is it? Can you sum up the experience that you've had, and what does it mean to you? And it's a big, it's a tall order.
Oh, I loved the original series because I felt like I was one of the misfit toys in the land of misfit toys, and Star Trek made me feel like I could belong. Even if I was a late bloomer, so even though I was tall and awkward and gawky and I had high waters and I was a poor kid, I was accepted to just be whoever I was. So when I got to be Dax, oh my gosh, the blessing of being Dax. I grew so much as a person being Dax. I grew so much as a person interacting with everybody that is a part of Star Trek, and that includes all of you. Because it's a world we've all created. We've created it, this beautiful world where we're all accepted and we're compassionate and giving and caring to everyone, and it's been the biggest blessing in my life to be able to be Dax. I'm so grateful, and that part of me continues to feed me and help me be a better person every day. And I love each and every one of you guys, because we're all part of the same universe, you know?
You guys have questions? Do we have any fan questions here? You want to start on this side? We have a gentleman over here next.
Hi. Thank you for standing up for women actors. I appreciate your
Thank
stand.
you.
That's what you did, because they give the men more perks and women need it the same way.
Thank you.
And I appreciated the character of Dax because she was a powerful woman, etc. And I love that about, well, I see it in you too. I know you're nicer. Anyway, I wanted you to say something about Renegades, Requiem. Because this is one of your latest works, so you know I wasn't extra.
Oh, right on. I wanted to work with, I kept hearing about these shows that were fan-run shows, and Renegades came up because Tim Russ was directing it, and I'm like, oh, dude, he's a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, can I come play on your show? He's like, what? You want to be on my show? And I'm like, yeah, it'd be fun. I'm like, we're just like all friends, right, hanging out, and that's exactly how it felt. It was so easy, and really getting to work with Walter was a huge highlight. We really bonded, and he's such a sweet, fun, really hip old dude, I gotta say. He really is. So much fun.
It's like my grandfather, Walter.
Right? Oh my God.
We traveled a little bit with him, and every time he'd walk away, we would threaten him. If he walked off again, we're going to send him right on a plane and send him home.
It was so scary a little bit, wasn't it? Yeah. we were in Europe, and he's like, we were in this mall, and he sort of wandered off, and we're like, where did Walter go? Everybody's looking for Walter. Anyway, yeah, it was a great experience. Everybody was super nice. I don't know where it's going. At the time, I really wanted them to drop the Star Trek thing too. I'm so glad it all ended up working out that way. I think it's too bad. I think it's a great idea. I wish they could pull it in some way to become a series. But I don't know. I actually haven't seen the whole thing because I have a hard time watching myself.
All right, let's go on the side over here on stage right.
And thank you for your son being in it.
Hey, Mr. Sorry, I just want to say, Mr. Farrell, you're beautiful and talented, and what's kind of your mindset as you prepare for any character, whether it's Dax or any other character? What's your mindset to kind of get in the mood to play the character, like before they say action? Or, yeah.
That's a good question. Thank you. I think really what's most important is I have to know what I want in the scene. What is it that I am trying to get? What is it that I can't get past? What is it that I don't know, that I'll die if I can't have it? It has to be something that important. Something has to be at stake. And it could be something small, like just self-respect. It could be something big, like I'm saving someone's life. Usually, when I was saving someone's life, whether it would be a planet or not, it would be, for me, what's most powerful for me would be I was saving my sister or my niece Brittany. Because those were the two people that I was taking care of. So they were the most important and the most helpless people in my life. So that's who, when I was saving a planet, I was saving my niece, who at the time was probably like 8. But yeah.
One more question we have time for? Yes, I hope so.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir.
Hi. In one episode, you as Jadzia Dax told an initiate Arjun that you're still coming to terms with what it means to be Dax. Have you ever in your entire lifetime had a similar experience where you're still coming to grips with this amazing thing that's happened to you?
You mean in terms of Star Trek?
Just in terms of anything.
In terms of any, sure. Yeah, busy being human. Yeah, sometimes it is like that, right? But I think maybe it would feel like sometimes life feels too good to be true. It's a little overwhelming, and I have to remind myself that it's actually happening.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Terry Farrell. It's been my honor and pleasure to be here with you.